Stasis, finding the real fight. Stasis, finding the real fight. In December 2023, the presidents of three of the most prestigious universities in the United States, Harvard, Penn, and MIT, appeared before the United States Congress and were asked by Representative Elise Stefanik whether calls for the genocide of Jewish people would constitute harassment under their respective universities' codes of conduct. Each of them said, in essence, that it would depend on the context. The political and reputational consequences were immediate and severe. The president of Penn resigned within days. The president of Harvard resigned within a month. The president of MIT survived, but only narrowly. The video of the testimony was viewed tens of millions of times. Donors withdrew. Congressional hearings continued. The institutions involved were reshaped in lasting ways by what had happened in those few minutes. The presidents had been preparing for the wrong fight. They had been preparing. Their internal preparation documents, leaked later, confirmed this, for a fight about the quality of campus speech, about whether their universities had been too tolerant of pro-Palestine demonstrations, too quick to allow Jewish students to feel unsafe, too slow to respond. They had practiced giving nuanced answers about the difficulty of balancing free expression against community well-being. They had rehearsed the language of context, of balance, of the institutional commitment to academic freedom. The fight they walked into was not about quality, it was about definition. Stefanik was asking, with great precision, under your existing code, which uses the word harassment, does the specific phrase calls for genocide fall within the category named by that word, yes or no? She was asking a one-bit question about a category boundary. The presidents heard a multi-bit question about how to balance values. They answered the multi-bit question. The audience, the room, the cameras, the future clip had been listening for the one-bit answer. The mismatch was the disaster. This is what it looks like when a debate is fought on the wrong stasis. The classical rhetorical tradition recognized 2,500 years ago that almost every dispute can be located on one of four levels. The Greeks called these levels stases. The Latin tradition called them constitutions. They are the four places, and the only four places where two reasonable people can actually disagree. The first level is fact. Did it happen? Is the empirical claim true? Did the defendant pull the trigger? Did the company breach the contract? Has the climate warmed by a particular amount? At the level of fact, the dispute is settled by evidence. Documents, witnesses, measurements, records. If the dispute can be resolved by going to the data, you are at the level of fact. The second level is definition. Granted that something happened, what do we call it? Granted the defendant struck the victim, was it murder, manslaughter, or self-defense? Granted that someone said something offensive, was it harassment, criticism, or political speech? Granted that the climate has warmed, is this climate change, natural variation, or some combination? At the level of definition, the dispute is settled by category boundaries. Which name applies? Which threshold has been crossed? The third level is quality. Granted what happened, granted what we call it, was it good or bad? Granted that this was a tax cut, was it good policy or bad? Granted that this was an act of war, was it justified or unjustified? At the level of quality, the dispute is settled by values. Which considerations weigh against which trade-offs are acceptable. The fourth level is jurisdiction, sometimes called procedure. Granted what happened, granted what we call it, granted whether it was good or bad, who is standing to decide? Should this case be heard in this court? Should this question be resolved by this body? Should I, the speaker, even be the one having this conversation? At the level of jurisdiction, the dispute is settled by procedural authority. Whose decision is this? The four stases are not optional. Every dispute lives on at least one of them. Most disputes live on exactly one. A debate proceeds productively when the participants agree on which stasis they are working at and disagree only on the substance at that level. A debate goes badly, and most debates go badly, when the participants are working on different stases and do not realize they are doing so. the Harvard president in the hearing, was on quality. Stefanik was on definition. They were not having the same conversation, and the audience, watching, had no way to interpret what was happening except as the president's evasion of a clear question. From the president's point of view, she was answering a difficult question in a nuanced way. From Stefanik's point of view, and from the audience's point of view, she was refusing to commit to a category boundary that any reasonable person could commit to. Both perceptions were correct, given the stasis each was working at. The catastrophe was the failure to identify the mismatch in real time and resolve it. A trained debater, hearing Stefanik's question, would have done one of three things. They would have answered the definition question directly, yes, this falls within harassment under our code, and dealt with the quality question afterward, separately. Or they would have explicitly named the stasis problem. I think you're asking a question that combines two distinct issues, and I want to address them in turn. Or they would have refused the framing of the question on jurisdictional grounds. That's a question for our adjudication process, not for me to answer in the abstract. Any of those would have been survivable. What is not survivable is to mishear the stasis, answer the wrong question, and trust the audience to follow the move. The audience will not follow the move. The audience will register that you did not answer the question. There is a procedure for diagnosing the stasis of any argument, and it is one of the most useful procedures there is. You can do it in your head, in real time, while someone is speaking. With practice, it takes about 20 seconds. This is the entire procedure. It looks simple. It is simple. It is also reliably absent from the preparation of intelligent people who have been arguing in public for years. The trained debater, hearing any argument, runs this diagnostic in the background. Within 20 seconds, they know which stasis is in play. Within 40 seconds, they know whether their opponent is on the same stasis. If their opponent is on a different stasis, they name it. I think we may be answering different questions here, and force the conversation to a single level before any substantive move is made. Naming the stasis is itself a major move. It elevates you, in the audience's perception, to a higher level of analytic competence than the opponent has shown. It also often neutralizes the opponent's preparation, because their preparation was for the wrong stasis. The audience watches the opponent reorient, and concludes, correctly, that you have a clearer view of the dispute than they do. When Adi Shankaracharya walked into the house of Mandana Misra in approximately 800 CE, in the city of Mahishmati in central India, the 8-day debate that followed could have been fought on 3 different stases. It was widely believed at the time, in both the Mimamsa school that Mandana represented and the Vedanta school that Shankara represented, that the goal of human life was moksha, liberation from the cycle of birth and death. The schools agreed on this. They agreed it was good. They agreed that humans should pursue it. They disagreed about how to pursue it. The Mimamsa position was that ritual action, the performance of Vedic sacrifices in the prescribed manner with the prescribed disposition, produced the karmic conditions that led to moksha. Mandana was one of the most rigorous and respected exponents of this position in his generation. He had written a book, The Brahma Siddhi, that argued for it at length. The Vedanta position, as Shankara represented it, was that ritual action could produce many useful things, including, importantly, mental purification, but that moksha was not among them. Moksha was the recognition of one's identity with Brahman, and recognition was a knowledge event, not the result of any action. Karma could prepare the mind. Knowledge alone produced liberation. A naive debater on either side would have fought this on the level of quality. Which path is better? Which produces moksha more reliably? Which is more accessible to ordinary practitioners? These are quality questions. They are about weighing trade-offs between 2 acknowledged paths. Shankara did not fight on quality. Shankara fought on definition. His opening question, which which sounds in the textual tradition like a friendly clarification, was, "What is moksha?" He asked Mandana to define the goal both schools were committed to. Mandana defined it as the standard tradition defined it: eternal, beginningless, unchanging, unconditioned by anything else. Moksha is nitya, not subject to time. Moksha is akarana, not produced by anything. Moksha is aparikina, not bounded by conditions. Shankara accepted the definition. Mandana, having given the definition his own school used, could not retract it. The definition was now in play. Then Shankara asked his second question: can anything that is produced be eternal? Mandana, as a careful Mimamsa philosopher, said no. Production is a process in time. A thing that is produced has a beginning. A thing with a beginning is not eternal. This was uncontroversial Indian philosophy, and Mandana would have looked foolish denying it. Then Shankara asked his third question, and in this question the 8-day debate was effectively ended on the second day. If moksha is eternal and produced things are not eternal, can ritual action, which is a process in time, produce moksha? It cannot, by Mandana's own definition, by Mandana's own admission. The cage was closed. What appeared to be a debate about whether karma or jnana was the better path turned out to be a debate about whether the word moksha could be applied to anything ritual action could produce. The answer, on the definitions both parties had publicly committed to, was no. The Mimamsa position was internally inconsistent, not because it had bad values, but because it used the word moksha in two incompatible senses. A quality debate would have run for years, with both sides citing scriptures, traditions, individual cases, and the weight of accumulated authority. A definition debate ended in 3 questions. Mandana lost because Shankara had identified the stasis correctly and Mandana had not. This is a pattern you will see throughout Shankara's career. Every major debate he won on stasis diagnosis. The Buddhist refutation in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya fights on definition. What does anatta, no self, actually mean? And on jurisdiction, can a school that denies the existence of a self coherently make claims about anything? The Mimamsa exclusion of Jnanakanda he refutes on definition. What is the scope of Vedic authority? And on jurisdiction, whose interpretation of the Veda is binding? The Chandala encounter, which we will study at length later, is fought on jurisdiction, who is standing to make this argument, and demolishes Shankara's social position by demonstrating that the Chandala has higher jurisdictional authority on the question of Brahman realization than the Brahmin sannyasi does. The pattern is consistent because the principle is general. Master debaters fight on the stasis where the opponent's case is weakest. They identify which stasis that is by running the diagnostic in the first 60 seconds of any encounter. Most opponents have a strong case at one stasis, a moderate case at another, and a weak case at a third. Shankara consistently fought on the third. You can do this too, you will need to practice. A note on jurisdiction, because it is the stasis most often missed by the otherwise sophisticated. A great many disputes that look substantive are jurisdictional in disguise. Should we have done X often resolves to whose decision was this, and the participants are arguing about the action when they should be arguing about the authority. A common pattern: A makes a decision, B objects on quality grounds, the decision was bad, A defends on quality grounds, the decision was good. The actual disagreement is jurisdictional. B believes A had no right to make the decision unilaterally, but cannot articulate this, and so attacks the decision instead. You can spot the disguised jurisdictional dispute by listening for one of 3 phrases. Who are they to? That wasn't their call, they should have asked. Whenever any of these phrases appears in an argument, jurisdiction is the actual stasis. The quality argument is a proxy. Resolving the quality argument will not resolve the dispute, because the dispute is not about quality. The participants will continue to feel aggrieved no matter who wins the quality argument, because the stasis on which they are aggrieved has not been engaged. The same pattern operates in marriages, in workplaces, in international negotiations, in the procedural complaints that consume legislatures. A great deal of human conflict is jurisdictional and is misdiagnosed as quality. Master debaters and master mediators recognize this and reorient the argument to the actual stasis.